Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. The title of today's segment, and today I will do it as a segment slash lesson. I will be speaking to you during this lesson. The title of today's lesson slash segment is Evil versus Evil, the lesser of the two, going against the grain. Once again, this segment is entitled Evil versus Evil, the lesser of the two, going against the grain. Once again, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws. Do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. Now, we were given specific instructions by the Most High. And anytime we fail to adhere to that law and to walk within the confines of those instructions, we are punished for it. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And in order for us to be saved from these beatdowns, what we must do, we must walk in accordance to law. Or what we are to do when we have wronged the Most High and we have transgressed him, then what we must do once that is acknowledged, we are to turn and face Jerusalem, because we are in the land of our captivity. We cannot offer a sacrifice. There are no Levites and there is no temple, so we cannot do that in these nations. So what we must do, we must acknowledge our faults simply by facing Jerusalem, lifting our hands in prayer, and making a supplication towards the Most High, acknowledging our faults, and then he will hear and he will heal us. Some of us are currently not taking heed to any of this, and we are continuing to go against the grain. So we have just saw what took place with the election. The dust has settled, and many of the children of Israel has gone against the grain. They have walked contrary to the Most High's instruction pertaining to putting a leader over them. So what I will do, I will once again read the law in your ears. That way that you may hear exactly what that criteria is. What it was back then and what it is still to this day, for the Most High changes not. These laws are perpetual. They are forever. They are unchangeable. Thy righteousness, that's his law, his word, is an everlasting righteousness. And his law is the truth. And that's why you will hear me say this all the time. There are no changes to these laws. These laws are to be enforced in our house, outside of the house, and it doesn't matter where we are to walk within these laws, statutes, and judgments and precepts. And the problem that we're having now in the midst of the children of Israel, and we have had in times past, the men are the leaders of any nation. And our men do not have the backbone, the stamina, the intestinal fortitude to punish wrongdoers. And that is because they are wrongdoers themselves. So it's very difficult for an unrighteous man to stand up and speak righteously, for he himself is unrighteous. So we have to, first of all, we have to start punishing wrongdoers. And the only way that's going to be done is going to take the righteous to do this, because an unrighteous man will not punish a wicked man, for he is wicked as well. So the unrighteous, they're in cahoots together. So it will take the righteous standing up and actually pointing out the acts of the wicked and having the people as a collective hold them accountable for their trespass. Now, let's deal with, we have had the election. The winner has been selected or elected, depending on how you feel about the whole situation. And many of the children of Israel were complicit and took part in this way of the heathen. And we were given specific instruction on what we were not to do pertaining to putting people ahead of us, or in leadership of us. So what I will do, I will reiterate that law. I will reiterate that commitment. And remember, where we broke the covenant with the Most High, we told Moses, look, we are afraid. We do not want to hear the Most High's voice, for we are fearful that we may die. Moshe, you go up. You commune with the Most High, and whatever it is he tells you to tell us, that we will do. That was our agreement with the Most High. And Moshe was a witness to that. And so were the mountains, the earth, the birds, and everything that was there. So our commitment was whatever we were instructed by the Most High's prophet Moshe, that we were to do. We have failed in that endeavor. We will start off this lesson / segment at Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy chapter 17, and I will read verse 14 and verse 15. Verse 14 of Deuteronomy chapter 17 reads, When thou art come unto the land which Yahweh thy strength giveth thee, and shalt possess it, and shalt dwell therein, and shalt say, I will set a king over me, like as all the nations that are about me. Verse 15. Thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, or governor, whom Yah thy strength shall choose. One from among thy brethren shalt thou set king or governor over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. So, the instruction here is very simple. When we got into the land, and that's anywhere we go, whether it's the land that the Most High had set apart for us, that he had prepared for us, which is the land of Israel here on the earth, or whether we were in the land of our enemies, as we are now, captives in the midst of the nations. If we ever decided to have a governor, a ruler, a leader over us, criteria number one, it has to be a man that the Most High chose. Now, keep in mind, the Most High will not choose a man who is wicked and walks contrary to his law to rule over his people. So let's make that clear. So the man that would be chosen would be a man in whose heart is the Most High's law. Next, we were not to choose anyone that was not of our own people. We are not to put our enemies ahead of us, and we are not to put them in a position to lead us. These are our enemies. So the children of Israel has gotten together, went to the polls, and voted for a man that has a proven track record of doing harm to all Israel here in America. And that man has not changed. And as I've said in times past, when we see one of our own people sitting at the table of our enemies, that our enemy is very certain, and I've already vetted that person, and our enemies know that they will not poison the food. So therefore, when we see our own people sitting at a table of our enemies, we must understand clearly that they're enemies unto us as well. So we were given an opportunity to where there's a man who has made laws against our people, have separated our men from their families, have locked them up, and it has no compunctions about it, no regrets about it, no apologies for it. So we continue to see our enemies spit in our faces, tear up our families, encourage the incarceration, and make laws directly against us to harm our families and to separate them. And they're never held accountable for it. We continue to suffer. We continue to cry out towards our enemies. We do not cry out towards the Most High. We do not cry out facing towards Jerusalem, lifting our hands in prayer. And secondly, if we are to cry out to the Most High, the only way that he's going to hear us and heal us and do anything on our behalf, we've got to be walking within the confines of his law. So crying and begging our enemies will do us no good. It will be to no avail. Turning towards the Most High and crying out unto him, and you are not obeying his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, well, that will be null and void as well. So if we're going to have any result that's going to be to our benefit. First of all, we cannot ask our enemies for anything. They're not in a position to give it to us. And we cannot ask them for righteousness, for they do not know what it is. Keep in mind, we are the children of Israel. We are the chosen people. And anytime you hear the chosen people, the question should be asked, chosen to do what? Our job. We are chosen. We are ordained, so to speak. We are to take the Most High's righteousness and to teach it to the nations. That's his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. That is our job. We are to teach that to the nations. That is our purpose. And we have fallen away from that. So we have voted a man in that has been harmful to us, him and his vice president. So when we had an opportunity to quote unquote punish him by not partaking in wickedness, however, we chose to partake in it and totally disregard all that this man has done towards us. So when the Most High delivered someone up onto us that has been harmful to us, and it is our opportunity to punish that individual, once we decide to turn our back on that, you can just expect the next 4 years is going to be extremely hard on the children of Israel. Stand by for it. Now, we understand clearly that this is wickedness. The laws of this nation, from its inception, has not been to our people's benefit. Never has been, nor will it ever be. That which is evil will always remain evil. That cannot be changed. And so we know clearly the system of this place is evil. But yet we are partakers in it. And we are to the point to where we are so lost, so confused, that we will pick what we call the lesser of two evils. Keep in mind that a righteous man withdraw his hand from all evil. There is no such thing as the lesser of the two evils. Evil is evil, and that's that. And any righteous person will withdraw his hand from it. So we are continuing to participate in the ways of the heathen that are wicked. And we expect some form of righteousness out of wickedness. And this is the confusion of faith that we have in these nations. Next, we know this is wicked once again. And many of us are stating that, well, the whole system needs to be torn down and replaced. But no one has the answer to what it is to be replaced with. So you'll tear the whole system down because it's wicked. Well, you can't tear it down if you also want to be a part of it. So it's going to be a decision to be made. There has to be a decision made by the children of Israel. If you deem the system to be wicked, then why are you participating in it? We must keep in mind that wicked systems are devised by wicked people. So therefore, if we know this system to be wicked, we must first look back and see exactly who created it, who created this wicked system. And if we realize that it's wicked, we have to ask ourselves, why are we trying to participate in a wicked system and trying to get righteousness and justice out of that which we know is wicked? That is a confusion of faith. Now, replacing a wicked system. What could we possibly replace a wicked system with? So the children of Israel, some of us, those of us who are smart enough to recognize that the whole system is corrupt. Those who have made it, those who continue to ensure that it functions the way it's supposed to function. It is not a just system. So what do we replace it with as the children of Israel? Many of us want to ignore the fact that all that we know is what our enemies have taught us. Let me repeat that one more time. All that we know in the lands of our captivity is that which our enemies have taught us. So if all of our enemies were to all of a sudden, just like that, vanish from the face of the earth, they will still be here via our thinking, for we have learned their ways and their customs, and we continue to cling towards that. So we are unable to come up with something that's totally new or different from that which they've already given us. It would be another variation of the wickedness that they have taught us from the time that we were held captive in the midst of their nations. So we will not be able to come up with anything that's new, and we will not be able to come up with anything that's better. If we were able to, we would have already done it. It would be nothing but a mirror, a copy, or a form, a variation of what they have already presented to us in times past. And that means it will be something that is wicked, something that is corrupt, and something that's against the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. For that is what they have taught us. Now, if we seek to replace that which we know is vile, that which we know is foul, that which we know is wicked and contrary to the Most High's law, we do not have to reinvent the wheel for this. All we have to do is take all that our enemies have taught us for centuries and replace it with the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Let that be the standard by which we live. Let that be the standard by which we judge each other and interact with each other. And if we were to do that, the entire world would be a better place. And certainly, as the children of Israel, these wicked systems that exist throughout the earth, same people running the same scheme, these things only exist, and we are only in the position that we are in because we continue to aid and abet our enemies. How so? Our enemies will not be able to rule over us if we turn to the Most High's righteousness. If we drop all this wickedness and this idolatry in these nations, stop voting for them and taking part in all of this madness, that's wickedness, that's harmful towards our people, they can govern without our vote. They don't need us to participate in anything at all. They can govern and do all that they do without us being present. The only thing is, if we were to withdraw our hands from their wickedness and from being in the midst of their wickedness and their idolatry, if we withdraw our hands and turn towards the Most High with our whole heart and our whole soul, confessing all of our iniquities and walking within this law, then those who are above us will be crushed. We will no longer be in this state that we're in, a low-level state. We will be returned as the leaders of the earth, the head of all the nations and not the tail. So, anytime that we participate in the foolishness of the heathen, all it does, it prolongs our stay in captivity. And this thing is really foul once you're able to see it for what it is. You have, first of all, the election with two individuals who could care less about our people, never have and never will. Now, I am in South Carolina. I've told many of you this before. Now, from my house, the polling station, the place where I'm supposed to go and vote, I can walk there. I mean, it's like I can get in my car and be there within a minute. But guess what? All of the polling places, the places where you go and vote, these are all idol houses. Houses unto idols. What you call churches. So, in the participation of this wickedness, you become more ensnared because in order for you to cast this vote, they would have you go to the house of their idol by which to do so. All of this does nothing but compound your sin, and it creates great problems for you. This is why I've done that video. The pastor, the politician, and the police, the three P's that are dangerous, they go hand in hand. The whole system is devised to keep our people astray. And the pastor is complicit in this. And so therefore, for you to vote, number one, you're voting for your enemies. That's a transgression. 2, you're going into an idle house by which to cast your vote. That is a transgression. And 3, there's a man that looks like you who pity you not, called a shepherd. A shepherd is what you would call a leader. A shepherd is supposed to guide the sheep to where the sheep doesn't get attacked by wolves or bears or anything like that. So the sheep will not be torn. The sheep in this case would be the people, and the shepherd would be the leaders. So what we have done, we have allowed who they would call themselves shepherds, these pastors, who have absolutely no care for their people. They would take the sheep and deliver them up to the slaughter, i.e., hand them over to the politician. And there are kickbacks for this. So we have to understand how dangerous these 3 P's are and how they work together. So we are doing harm to ourselves when we go into these churches to vote. And the pastor's there smiling, handing out cookies and everything else. All of these things are a trap and a snare unto you, O Israel, and these things are done on purpose. This is not an accident that you are going into a church by which to cast this vote. So we have to take all of these things into consideration. Sometimes a man may see a thing, he can identify it. I noticed this and I noticed that, but he doesn't know exactly what it is or what the consequences of what it is that he's seeing. So as we see our people elect a man that has been harmful to them, totally disregarding what he has done, speaking about forgiveness, and let me touch on forgiveness. When someone violates the Most High's law, you nor I have the ability to forgive them. This forgiveness ploy and trick has been taught to us by our enemies, that we never strike back at him. You will find nowhere where one man forgave another man in the book of remembrance. You can't find it. It does not exist. We must keep in mind these laws does not belong to us. These laws belong to the Most High. When you transgress these laws, the only person that can ever forgive you for any transgression pertaining to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts is the Most High and the Most High alone. That means one. So there is no such thing as you kill my brother and I tell you I forgive you and you're off the hook. The law of murder is not mine. It belongs to the Most High. You can cry and plead and do whatever you want to with all of my family members. You have to deal with the Most High, and the Most High will certainly deal with you for murder, because there's no getting around murder. There is no way. Okay, the punishment for that is clear. So we have to certainly understand this forgiveness, turn the other cheek nonsense. This is what has been taught to us by our enemies, and that was taught to us for his sake, not for ours, that we will never reach back and strike at him or strike against him and to be in fear of him. And the Most High has caused us to have a heart of fear when it comes to our enemies. We are fearful of them. The average Israelite may have all the muscle in the world and be loud talking and be whatever he wants to be. But in his heart, he is fearful of his enemies because the Most High Spirit is not upon him. Now, let's turn to, we will turn to Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26. When the Most High gives our enemies into our hand for us to deal with him as it so states, and we decide, you know what, we're not going to enforce judgment, stand by for what we're going to get. So we have had a man who has been an enemy unto us. He decides he wanted to run for the president of the United States. We chose to ignore all the harm that he has done to our people, all the foul things that he has said about our people, and we chose to go out here and vote for him, to put a man who is not of our people, to put a man who has a track record of doing harm to our sons, our uncles, and our fathers, and tearing up our families. And we go against the grain. We go against the Most High's law and put a man who is not of our brethren ahead of us to lead us. I want you to think about how you think that's going to go. It won't go well. And this is going to be proven to us. So this is why I have read this law in your ear. That way when you see things, it's getting uglier every year. I know you're seeing this day by day, year by year. Things are getting harder and it's getting ugly for our people and the nation as a whole. So therefore, when you're seeing this, the reason why I'm reading this is in your ear is that way when you see it, it can make some sense to you. That way you may see and understand. And this is how we bear witness to the Most High's words, that they are true. Now, let's jump to, once again, Leviticus chapter 26. We will be moving around between we're going to be skipping some verses in some of Leviticus 26, but I want to cover that. That way I can reiterate exactly what we've got coming for some of the madness that we're doing. All right. Leviticus chapter 26, and we will start at verse 17. Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 17 reads, "And I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none pursueth you." Now, Most High said he will set his face against us. That's why we're being murdered and killed all over the place. His face has been set against us. All right, that's why we're suffering from all these diseases. Okay, what you call diseases, the Most High calls plagues. So we're dealing with them, whether it be cancer, whether it be STDs, which are sexual plagues for sexual misconduct and promiscuity. The Most High is plaguing us for everything that we do that is contrary towards his law. Okay, so he says clearly he's going to have our enemies. We will be slain before our enemies, and those that hate us will reign over us. Now, the men that's reigning over us absolutely hate us. However, we are in love with our enemies. We seek their approval. We are fearful of them. Instead of doing and obeying the Most High's commandment, the Most High told us that we are to be his fear. We are to be his dread. We are fearful of people attacking us in the street. So we teach our kids how to cower down to the cops. We have grown men on TV speaking of how afraid they are when the cops pull them over. Certainly you're afraid. The Most High Spirit is not upon you. You don't walk within his law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And that is why you're fearful. Okay, now these same men that's talking this, scared this, and scared that, these jokers in the church 3 times a week. Excuse me. Turn my phone off. Oop. 1 second. All right. These same men that are so fearful are the same individuals that's in the church house 2 and 3 times a week. Yet they're fearful, yet they're cowards, and will not and does not have the Spirit of the Most High on them, by which they can stand before their enemies. Many of these men are on TV crying like little girls, presenting an image of weakness and effeminate behavior before our enemies. These men do not walk in the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Many of them are committing javelin offenses. You know exactly what I mean by that. Okay? So these men are fearful, and what they're doing, they're causing that spirit of fear to spread in the midst of the men of Israel. That is why in times past, when we went to war, the man that was affrighted, the man that was scared, chump, go back to the house. Because what we do not want is the spirit of a punk, the spirit of a chump to spread in the midst of our warriors. And what we're seeing now is many of these chumps, many of these punks who are fearful of their enemies and are enemies unto us are out here crying and acting like schoolgirls in order to get people to accept them, in order to have their enemies look favorable towards them, in order for them to be viewed as less of a threat. Once again, the Most High Spirit is not upon them, and that's why they do what they do. They are indeed afraid, and they are indeed cowards. That's why they're on TV crying. However, it makes the men of Israel looks weak. So therefore, man of Israel who's walked within the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we are to challenge these men at every turn. We are to teach our people the righteousness of the Most High. That way they may be strengthened by His Spirit and will not have a spirit of cowardice. All right, now we have read verse 17. Now let's move to verse 18. And if you will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. So we have seen the Most High use Joe Biden to lock us up, use Kamala Harris to lock us up, and do all types of things to us. They have said clearly they will not do anything specifically for the children of Israel. However, they will do everything for the men and the women who participate in the abomination in the sight of the Most High, i.e., homosexuality, LBGT, and all the other funny stuff. Okay? So, what we're seeing here is the wickedness of this place. And this is what you're voting for. How can you side with someone who is contrary to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts? That is only possible one way. Any man that's going to pass laws in favor of anyone or groups of people that walks contrary to the Most High's law, that man also is contrary to the Most High's law. And if you side with him, you also are contrary to the Most High's law. So this is where we have to be very careful of our allegiances. All right. Let's move to verse 21, same chapter, Leviticus chapter 26. Verse 21 reads, And if ye walk contrary unto me, and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. So the Most High has laid out His criteria. You are to walk lockstep with me. You are to be holy, Israel, for I am holy. But yet we have chosen things that are unholy. We have chosen to side with our enemies. And the reason why we were brought into the lands of our enemies, because our enemies know not the Most High. And so therefore, since we wanted to walk in our own way, we were led in our own way. And we're seeing exactly what we're getting right now. And it's not working out for us. So at some point, we are to consider this and turn back. Now, let's jump to verse 23. And if you will not be reformed by me by these, but will walk contrary unto me, then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. Most High is very redundant. So as we continue to read this law, have a clear understanding of what we're not supposed to do, and we say, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. I know I'm not supposed to be voting for my enemies. I'm not supposed to put my enemies in any leadership role over me or my people. But you know what? I'm an American. This is part of the voting process. We want to be part of the voting process. If we don't vote for such and such, it's like voting for such and such. And yeah, they're both bad, but we're going to choose the lesser of 2 evils. This is the mindset of our people. So once we start doing that, and we start putting the system of government, before the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, or putting ourselves before the Most High's laws, judgments, and precepts, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. So we're to put that standard, the Most High's law, His word, His covenant, we're to put that covenant first. And everything else is after that covenant. If you do not come up and meet the standard of the covenant, we are not to deal with you, or we're not to deal with anything that's contrary to that covenant. And that covenant would be all the instruction that we were given. All right. Now, we just read verse 23. Let's jump to verse 24. Then will I also walk contrary unto you, and will punish you yet 7 times more for your sins. That's verse 24. Let's go to verse 25. And I will bring a sword upon you, that is death in all of its manifestations, that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. This is the quarrel. This is why we are being beat down in these streets. This is why in the midst of Israel there are men that look like us that are treacherous. There are women that look like us that's treacherous, because the Most High has split up the family. He split up the entire house of Israel. We've got brother against brother, man against woman, man against his son, woman against his daughter, in nothing but chaos and madness in the entire house of Israel, no matter where we are. And this is the quarrel of his covenant. We just don't want to do it. And when we are gathered together, and when ye are gathered together within your cities, I will send a pestilence among you, and ye shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. Now, in all of our cities, what do you see? Name every major city in America and tell me what it is that you see. Also, go through Central, South, and Latin America, and in certain parts of Africa, where you know the children of Israel dwell, and look at the major cities and tell me what you see. What you see is bloodshed. What you see is crime. What you see is corruption by these leaders, the politician, the police, and the pastor. Nothing but corruption and wickedness, in particular bloodshed. Homosexuality in Atlanta. Atlanta's roughly about 2 hours from where we are. You go to Atlanta, you will be absolutely disgusted with what you see. You would be. The only time I go there is if I have to go pick up someone from the airport. Other than that, I do not go there. It is nothing but modern day Gibeah. You understand me? Gibeah of Benjamin. If you're reading this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All right. Let's move over to verse 28. And verse 28 reads, we are in Leviticus chapter 26. Then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury. And I, even I, that's singular. The Most High is not a trinity. He is one. We were instructed this at Sinai. Hear, O Israel, Yah, your strength is one. Not two, not three. Just want to make that clear. Once again, verse 28. Then I will walk contrary unto you also in fury. And I, even I, will chastise you 7 times for your sins. So the Most High has said this 3 times. So he is to be taken seriously. He is no plaything. We will be punished for our sins. There is no getting around it. Okay? Now, let's move down to let's jump down to verse 33. And verse 33 reads, and I will scatter you among the heathen. That's exactly where we are today, scattered among the heathen. And will draw out a sword after you. That's why we're being killed in these many nations, and no one is getting punished for it. And your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. The land desolate. That's the land that's in Israel. Many parts of Israel right now, the land does not grow. There's no crops there. There's no plants there because the Most High caused Ezekiel to curse the land. And we got the boot. We were kicked out. Look at our cities once again. Look at the major cities where we live and look and see what you're seeing there. The question is this an accident or are these words truth? You're to make a determination with that. Can you bear witness to these words where you live or in the major cities where you see the children of Israel? All right. Now, let's jump down to verse 36. And verse 36 reads, And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the land of their enemies. Now, once we were kicked out of Jerusalem, scattered to the four corners of the earth in all these many nations, speaking all these weird languages and having all these weird names of our enemies, following their ways, their customs, and bowing down to their idols. Now, the Most High said, those of us that would be left alive, he said he would put a faintness into our hearts in the lands of our enemies. That's why you got Big Mike out here crying like a 12-year-old girl. That's why you've got Van Jones crying like a 12-year-old girl. And that's why you have other grown men, 6 foot something, 200 something pounds, who have the heart of cowards. Most High Spirit is not upon them. That's the faintness in their hearts. These chumps, these are cowards. And they're going to always be cowards because the Most High Spirit is not upon them. They do not walk within his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. Therefore, they will be fearful of their enemies, and they will not be strengthened by the Most High Spirit by which to stand before their enemies. And that is the faintness that's put in our hearts before we got kicked out. But if you let the Christian tell it, they tell you that God didn't give me a spirit of fear. Really? That's why these grown men are out here crying like punks on national TV, trying to gain some sympathy from their enemies, not understanding that their enemies know not righteousness. But yet they're trying to find empathy from the man that's got the bullet, the gun pointed in their face, and the knife in their back. The only way these people's hearts are going to change towards us is when our hearts change towards the Most High. The Most High is the spirit of all living. And he stated clearly that once we turn with our whole heart and our whole soul, us and our seed, our children, once we turn back onto him, then he's going to cause our enemies to be at peace with us. And he's going to cause them to have compassion upon us. Why? Because he is the one that brought our enemies against us. So, we've tried begging them. That hasn't worked. We've tried protesting. No weapons or anything. Here come the dogs, the hoses, the billy clubs, the bullets, and the jail cells. So, there's no way to appease our enemies with a peaceful protest. He can care less about that. So you're thinking that this is just our enemies. No. Who we're going up against the Most High. It is his spirit upon these people. Now, if we understand that concept, then we can approach this thing a little differently. Okay? So when we see our enemies doing what they're doing, it's the Most High's fury that's in them that's causing them to do that. And the only time you're going to see that fury is when you're walking contrary to the Most High's law. However, if you're walking within the confines of that law, he will cause all of your enemies to be at peace with you and to have compassion upon you. At this point, what other choice do you have? Let's read verse 36. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the land of their enemies. That's why we got muscle-bound punks out here. Terry Crews and the rest of them. And the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursueth. Okay? Verse 37. And they shall fall one upon another, as it were before a sword, when none pursueth, and ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies. Now, no power to stand before our enemies. So what many of our people have done, you know what? They have taken into account and actually put in full effect, well, if we can't beat them, heck, let's join them. We can't beat them, let's join them. That's a no-no. That is a no-no. We're not to participate in any of this wickedness. You know it's wicked, you are to withdraw your hands from it. If you know this system is evil and you want to see it brought down, then what you do, you withdraw your hands from it. You turn to the Most High. You walk in righteousness. because only when you're walking in righteousness can you ask for righteous judgment. That is the only time you'll get that. And if that's done, then this whole system comes crashing down. I've said in times past, in videos past, there is no game if we don't play. So our enemies clearly understand that the only way this whole charade continues is with our participation. The only way. That is why the pushing of the homosexuality and all the other foul agendas, it is brought to us first. And it's presented to us. And they will pick families such as old Nasty Gillum and his family and present that to us for us to accept. And what we are to do as holy people. Most High said, Israel, you are holy. And we are to be holy because he is holy. There's no way a holy man or woman or a holy people will accept that which the Most High has deemed to be unholy. So therefore, when we are presented with the Don Lemons and the, what's his name, and the Gillums and all of these other punks, when we are presented with them, we are to stand firm against them and stand firm in this word. And the Most High Spirit will strengthen you against them, and there'll be nothing that anyone can do about that. So that is our protection. That is our shield and buckler. You've tried everything else, and it has failed you. All right. Now, let's move to verse 38. And verse 38 reads, And ye shall perish among the heathen, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up. We're being eaten up in these lands. You work all day long. At the end of the month, you don't have too much to show for it. You're plagued with problems. You're plagued with diseases. There is no peace here. You have to look over your shoulders. You have to worry for your own safety. Worry about the safety of your children. Worry about the safety of your wife. Okay, your wife and your family. You have to worry about everything here. There is no rest here. Okay, and that's because we are in the land of our enemies. You will have rest in your own home, in your own land. And until we get back there, we will not have any rest. And that is why we're seeing and we're perishing in the midst of the heathen. These lands are eating us up. It is draining us. Verse 39. And they that are left of you shall pine away in their iniquity in your enemies' lands. Lands, plural. And also in the iniquity of their fathers shall they pine away with them. All right. So the Most High is stating that those of us who are left, we will pine away. We will rot away. Okay. We will pine away in the iniquity in your enemies' lands. Remember, we're in Central America, South America, Latin America, Africa, and North America, and Asia. Children of Israel are to the four corners. We're in all of these nations, and we're pining away. What does that mean? We have taken a hold of these nations' ways, customs, and their idols. We have taken a hold of them. We believe in this thing. We have also committed javelin offenses. We've married onto the daughters of the stranger. We have had children with them. And so therefore now, when we hear this law, we don't even want to hear that. Because we have taken a hold of the ways of the heathen, and in many cases we have married them. So when we hear this law and we realize that we're in transgression, we don't want to let any of these things go. And so therefore we pine away. Our sins begin to be multiplied. And we live a miserable existence in these lands pretty much. Full of worry, full of trouble, full of turmoil and plight. Okay? So that is for us, those of us who are left alive. Now let's see what the Most High states here. And also in the iniquities of their fathers shall they pine away with them. So we will pine away and die and suffer like our fathers. What is the iniquity of our fathers? The answer to that question is idolatry. Our fathers chose to walk after gods that the Most High never instructed us to walk after. We chose to walk after idols, the work of men's hands, statues, and things of the like. Things therein there is no profit. Wherein there is no profit. There's no profit in these things. It profited us for nothing to actually kiss a statue and bow down to it and do the sign of the cross and all this other madness that we see in these nations. So we're pining away in these nations for our own iniquity and for the iniquity of our fathers. And that iniquity is idolatry. All right, now let's move to verse 40. And if they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, that is idolatry, with their trespass, which they trespassed against me, and that also they have walked contrary unto me. So we are to acknowledge our trespass, that we have violated and done violence unto the Most High's law. Not only have we done it, many of us in ignorance, our fathers have done it as well. So we are to acknowledge the error of our fathers. We are to acknowledge the error of our own ways. And once we have done that, then we go ahead and make that turnaround and do that which is right in the sight of the Most High. So this is where he's saying that if they shall confess their iniquity and the iniquity of their fathers, we have violated the Most High's law simply by walking after idols that the Most High told us specifically that we are to worship no one other than him and him alone, and that he was one. And somehow we let someone teach us something to the contrary. All right. Excuse me. Now, dealing with verse 41. And that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies. So here you are, Israel. You're in a land. You're in Brazil. You're in Honduras. You're in Barbados. You're in Trinidad. You're in America. You're in Haiti. You're in Dominican Republic. You're in Panama, Nicaragua, in Mexico, and all of these other places where our people have been displaced and decimated, have no idea who they are, have no idea where they are, and most certainly have no idea why they are there. The most amazing thing about our people is just, if you ask the average Israelite, why do we suffer such hardship? The confusion on their face is fascinating. And they will tell you, man, I don't know. They have no idea. It's a confusion to where you have no idea who you are, where you're from, what your language used to be, what your landmass is, and why you're where you are, and why you're being treated the way you're being treated. And that's a lot to take in. All right. Let me go ahead and read verse 41. 41 reads, and that I also have walked contrary unto them, and have brought them into the land of their enemies. That's where you are presently here in this message. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, and they then accept of their punishment of their iniquity. All right, I'm going to read that again. If then their uncircumcised hearts, an uncircumcised heart means it's a rebellious heart. Look, man, I don't care nothing about these laws. I believe in XYZ, blah, 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 blah. Rebellious. Don't want to hear nothing about the Most High or his laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. I believe simply what my enemies have taught me. So the rebellious spirit is that uncircumcised heart. All right. If then their uncircumcised hearts be humbled, meaning we've got to turn, face Jerusalem, lift our hands in prayer, and acknowledge our faults. That's how we become humbled. And they then accept of their punishment of their iniquity. So here's what we have to understand. For all that we have done, all the violence that we have done in violating the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, precepts, we have to turn, acknowledge our faults, lift our hands in prayer, ask forgiveness, and do that no more. So that's how our uncircumcised hearts become circumcised. Now we're now walking with the Most High. But even though we have done all of that, guess what? Still got to pay. You still have to pay. And that's the problem. See, the children of Israel, we have a problem making other people pay. We have a problem with that. Your child mess up, you don't want to enforce that punishment. And that's because you don't want any punishment enforced upon you. So I'm going to let him slide, because if it was me, I wouldn't want him to punish me like that. That's not how it works. Okay? When we're dealing with the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we are to dish out that judgment as it so states. So the Most High is stating here clearly that we have to accept of the punishment for our iniquities, which means once you turn, acknowledge your faults, confess all the foul that you have done, and you decide to do it no more, then you still got to pay. You still got to pay for your wrongdoing. However, the Most High will still have mercy upon you. And this is what we must accept. And it's hard for our people to accept this because we've been lied to for so long. We were told, you do this 1,000 times, and then, you just go ahead and you ask forgiveness, and all of this is going to go away. You can do it another time, and it'll go away again, and you do it again, and you add. That's not how the Most High works. That's not how the Most High works. So therefore, what we have to do, we have to be retaught how to think. Our enemies have taught us how to think in a manner that is beneficial to him and harmful to us. Keep in mind, we are in the lands, plural, of our enemies, plural. Therefore, the people that's against us are many, more than one. And in many cases, our enemies are in our own houses and in our own families, meaning there are men and women of Israel who will do their enemies' bidding to harm other Israelites. So we are to keep all of these things in mind. So the Most High said we are to accept of our punishment for our iniquity, which means we're going to be punished. We're not going to go altogether unpunished. We still going to have to do some paying. And once you are accepting of that, then you can move forward and find some peace. All right. Now, verse 42. Then will I remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham. I want you to see how that reads, because I've done a video. There's no such thing as spiritual Israel. You've got Israelites on here talking about we're all spiritual Israel. And anyone is a part of Israel. And you can be grafted into the house of Israel in all manner of nonsense, flat out lies, hypocrisies, and words contrary to the Most High's law. I want you to understand that Abraham had a son named Isaac, had a son named Jacob, and Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and he had 12 sons, and those 12 sons makes up the house of Israel, and their sons and all of their offspring. This is a generation. You cannot insert yourself into another man's genealogy. It is flat out impossible to do. That is why in the latter days, and when we are taken back into that landmass, the children of Israel, we will be given our former estates, our land masses, and the stranger that has taken a hold of the Most High's covenant to do that which is right in the sight of the Most High. We also have to allocate him his land as well. So we will have strangers dwelling in the midst of us. Strangers can't run nothing. They're already tearing up the earth all over the place right now. If Christianity was the bee's knees, and if it was the thing, there would be peace in the earth. The earth is at war. It languishes and it mourns, for the people are in gross darkness throughout the entire earth. All the Christian nations know nothing but war, make weapons of war, and have caused nothing but turmoil in the earth. And all that these Christian nations do are in direct, let me say that again, all that these Christian nations do is in direct opposition to the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And that's why the world is in a mess. So Christianity can't possibly be right. Just look around you. Look at 100 years ago. And so if you're seeing it getting worse day by day, what can you expect over the next 4 years, 10 years, etc.? This thing is going to get worse. And we all must make a decision exactly which way we're going to walk. Now, so we just discussed clearly that the Most High said he will remember his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That is a bloodline of people. There's no strangers in the midst of them. No strangers in the midst of them. No one can say, I'm an Israelite because I believe in the God that you believe in, or I worship the God that you believe in. If you worship our strength, you're a stranger. You're just a stranger that has to obey the same laws that we do. And we will treat you as one born in the land. But the bottom line is you're a stranger. And that's it. However, we are not to deal with the stranger in any unrighteous manner, because the stranger is going to be given a place better than sons and daughters. All right. Now, better than sons and daughters. The Most High said he's going to let not the stranger say that the Most High cut me off. So the stranger is not going to be able to say the Most High done utterly cut me off from his people. The stranger is not going to be able to say that, because the stranger that takes a hold of the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, the Most High said he's going to give that stranger a place better than sons and daughters. Who are the sons and daughters of the Most High? The children of Israel. So how is that stranger going to get a place better than the children of Israel? Well, that stranger is going to be alive. That stranger is going to be in the land. And the children of Israel that were contrary to the Most High's law and chose to walk in opposition to it, Most High is going to kill them. And so therefore, when those Israelites get removed from the earth, that's how that stranger is going to be given a place better than sons and daughters, better than the Israelites that were in opposition to the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. So when you read that scroll, that is the interpretation thereof. The stranger will be given a better place than the sons and daughters who decide, you know what, we're not going to keep this law. And the Most High is going to remove them. And the stranger that says, you know what, I'm going to take the Most High's law, and I'm going to be with the Most High's people, that stranger will be elevated above those who choose not to do that which is right, who are Israelites. The Most High is going to kill them. It's very simple. All right. Now, verse 40, let's jump straight to 43. 43 reads, we are in Leviticus chapter 26. The land also shall be left of them, and shall enjoy her Sabbaths, while she lieth desolate without them. And they shall accept of the punishment of their iniquity, because they despise my judgments, and because their soul abhorred my statutes. So, all the instructions that we were given, we hated them. The land's supposed to have its Sabbath. No, we're going to have no Sabbath. We're going to plant these crops and get this money. You know how Israelites think. So what we have in the house of Israel boils down to one thing. It's called lack of discipline. The men of Israel have absolutely no discipline. We do not care to adhere to law. We do not care to enforce any law. Now I want you to understand, to have that discipline and to be an enforcer of law means you have to be a leader. The children of Israel have not led anything in quite some time. We have been led by our enemies. Moreover, we have chosen our enemies to lead us. Let me say that again. The men of Israel don't know what leadership is. They don't. Any leadership that a man of Israel has is within the guidelines of his enemies. I don't care what position he holds or where he is. He is leading in the capacity set forth by his enemies. His enemies lay out the guidelines by which he is to lead. So a man of Israel is never ever on his own decide, you know what, I'm going to lead in this manner that's totally contrary to what I've been taught by my enemies. And I will say it again. All we know is what they have taught us. And so therefore, when we seek to replace wickedness, wickedness can and must only be replaced by righteousness. And we cannot put up righteous statutes and judgments unless we first are able to distinguish that which is righteous and that which is wicked. In order for us to be able to do that, we must first turn back onto this law. That way we know exactly what is righteous and what is wicked. And so therefore, we can now uphold the standard of righteousness. And that's going to be the key. And so now we can lead in righteousness. We can be strengthened through righteousness. And we can make our judgment righteous when we are leading. But right now, the average man of Israel doesn't care to lead anything. And if he is leading anything, he is being led by his enemies to do it. Just so you understand that. All right. So the Most High said that we hated his judgments, and our soul absolutely hated his statutes. In other words, we were lawless people. And if you look at us today, we are still lawless. And that is why we cling to our enemies, because they are lawless and so are we. And that is why we got the boot in the midst of them. We wanted lawlessness. The Most High said, "Is this what you want? Here you go. Now you've got this lawlessness. You don't like it. You're on TV crying every day about the injustice that you see, the unfairness, sad, crying, disturbed. The plight is too much for you. But you don't know this is what you chose. This is what your forefathers chose. And the reason why I'm reading this law in your ear is that way you know exactly how to alleviate this stress, this strife, these afflictions, and these plagues that's upon you, upon our people, and upon our houses. For if our men were to turn back to this law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, then you will have a spine. Right now, our men are spineless. Someone kills your son, you go in the back and take some money. That's a spineless act. Most High Spirit is not upon you, and you have no strength by which to stand before your enemies. The Most High will not strengthen you because you don't walk with him. All right. Let's move to verse 44. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, Most High is talking to you. We are currently in the land of our enemies. So the Most High is saying, in spite of your foul, in spite of the violence that you've done unto his law, when you are in the land of your enemies, and that's where you are right now, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away. You just heard it from the Most High. You just heard it from the Most High. In spite of your foul, your homosexuality, your idolatry, your adultery, your stealing, your lying, and all the other foul things that you're doing in this land as a collective, in all the lands of your enemies, Most High say, in spite of all that, I'm not going to entirely cast you off. So let's hear what the Most High has to say. This is the Most High speaking. This is he who delivered us out of Egypt. This is not JC. JC did not deliver the children of Israel out of Egypt at all. We're talking about the Most High and the Most High alone. This is our strength. This is our Savior. This is our Redeemer. He is one. There's no one like him. There's no one that can be replaced. No one that can replace him. There's no one can take the place of him. There's no one that we are to compare him to. This is also an error of our people, trying to compare some JC to the Most High. No such thing. Most High said there's no such thing. Most High said there's no God but him. He knows not any. And we're not to compare him to anyone. All right. 44, Most High speaking to you in the land of your enemies. And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away. Neither will I hate them, abhor them, to destroy them utterly. He's going to break us off. He's not going to break us all off, because some of us are going to be smart enough to say, you know what? I've been in this law. I see my people getting broke off left and right. This makes sense to me. I'm going to turn. I'm going to turn. And I'm one of them. I see what's going on. The Most High has blessed me to see what's going on, and I'm going to turn. But more importantly, not only will I turn, I will turn and take all that I have seen and have been made to understand and teach it to my people, that they may be given an opportunity to turn. That's why I'm doing this. You are to be redeemed without money. So this is why I'm reading this law in your ear. I can clearly see what is happening. Some of you can, some of you cannot. And these videos are helpful tools for you to be able to see, do some research, and potentially make a decision that can save you and your house. So the information that you're learning, the knowledge that you're gaining, and that which the Most High is allowing you to see, is not for your sake and your sake alone. We are to magnify this law and make it honorable. We are to hold this standard up. We are to teach it. More importantly, we are to do it and live it. That way we don't have ignorant Israelites running around talking about God's law can't be done by nobody. The laws were too hard and all this other foolishness. That's the kind of nonsense you hear out of the mouth of Israelites. Why do they say this? Because that's what the enemies have taught them. There is no law. It doesn't exist anymore. God made the law too hard for man to obey. And that is just blasphemous. All right. So once again, the Most High said, and yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away, neither will I abhor them, to destroy them utterly. He's going to break us off, but he's not going to kill us all, but he's going to kill a bunch of us. And to break my covenant with them, for I am Yah, their strength. So what he's not going to do, he's not going to do something that's unrighteous. He's not going to break his covenant with us. And he made it plain that we're doing all this madness in the midst of these nations right now, but he said clearly that we will not be allowed to be like the heathen. So you're doing this right now, but he's going to break us if this happens. How is he going to do that? He's going to kill us all. All right? He's going to kill us all. And he's not going to kill everyone. He said he's not going to utterly kill everyone, but who he's going to kill? The rebels and the transgressors. The rebels and the transgressors, the ones that don't want to do none of this. He's going to kill them. All right. Let's turn to verse 45, and then we'll finish up with 46. 45 reads, but I will, for their sakes, remember the covenant of their ancestors. Now, here's my question. Are your ancestors anybody? Or does your ancestors come out of the bloodline of your families? So the Most High is speaking to a specific family here. And when he's speaking of our ancestors, he's talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the rest of them in the days of old. That's who our ancestors are. Your ancestor is not a Philistine or an Egyptian It's not. Okay, so we have to understand this is based on genealogy. It's based on lineage, DNA, a family. The house of Israel is not everybody. Everybody is not the house of Israel, and they can never be. I don't care what they believe, think, or feel. I can't believe I'm another man's bloodline, and I can't feel my way in there, and I can't force my way in there. Your bloodline is unchangeable. You can't change that. Who your father is, you can't change that at all. All right, so that is who our ancestors are. These things makes plain that the children of Israel is of a family tree, genealogy, not some spiritual or religious belief. All right, now let's reread for verse 45. But I will for their sakes remember the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the heathen, that I might be their strength. I am Yah. Okay, so the Most High is saying that he's going to remember this covenant because of our ancestors, and that he brought us out of Egypt. I'm asking again, did JC bring the children out of Egypt? If he didn't, then JC is not God. This is a Roman idol. Last verse, verse 46. These are the statutes and judgments and laws which Yah made between him and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai by the hand of Moshe. Okay. Most High made this law, present these laws. It was made between him and the children of Israel. It was not made between him and the whole world. It was made between him and a specific bloodline. Now, anything that pertains unto us, our enemies have a certain character flaw. And the character flaw is anything that pertains to us, to give it to everyone else. That's what they do. Now, what that is part of our curse, to where that which we're supposed to have, everyone else is going to have it. Once we return back unto the Most High's law, statutes, judgments, and precepts, that which belongs and appertaineth unto us, the other nations will be fearful, and they will have no desire to have that which is ours. So, when you see here, and it states the Most High made this law with the children of Israel, this was not made with everyone. These covenants were established with the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's it. No other people on the face of the earth were given these laws. And so therefore, only the people of this bloodline will teach these laws. That's why I've said before, we were chosen and we are chosen. And chosen to do what? We are chosen to magnify the Most High's law and make it honorable in the sight of all these nations. So, I did this lesson. I read to you so you can hear the Most High's law within your ears, that you understand clearly there is no such thing as evil versus evil, and there's no such thing as a lesser of two evils. Anything that's evil, a righteous man or woman are to withdraw their hands from it. We must understand that we are not to go against the grain. We continue to go against the grain, and once we do this, it is to our hurt. The Most High has laid out these laws, and we are to walk within them. And if we don't, then he's going to punish us 7 times more. So what we have to do now is sit back, watch, wait, and see exactly what more punishments will be coming down the pipe for our people after we have done that which is contrary to what we were instructed. That way, what you will be able to do, you have read this word, Now you have to see with your own eyes if this thing is true or not. All right. I'm going to conclude this lesson slash segment with this. We have a few things to consider. One, this word is true. We can bear witness to it, and we can see clearly that we are to turn to this law, these statutes, judgments, and precepts if we're going to find any reprieve from what we're experiencing in all the lands, plural, of our captivity. So this thing is either true or it's not true. It's one of the two. You can look at it and with your own eyes, you may be able to bear witness and say, you know what, this is true and I'm going to turn. Or maybe you can't see it and say, you know what, that's not true and I don't buy it. I don't believe in it, won't partake in it. So it's either true or false. That is for the individual to do the research, do the studying, do the praying to figure out and to ask the Most High to show them that which is right. So this book is either true or false. Next, the book is either true or false, or the next reality that we have to face, if this book is not true or false, you don't know which way to go, then the next reality we have to face is, okay, we are a group of people who have been conquered by our enemies. We have been beaten down by them. We have been forced to adapt their languages, their names, their customs, their diets, and everything else. We live in the midst of our conquerors with a limited amount of freedom. We do not have the freedom and the luxuries that they are afforded. And so because of a conflict for land and natural resources of the land and for labors to be done on the land, we got into a military conflict with other groups of people. And we took that L. And we lost. And we were conquered by them. And we were taken all over the place in chains by them. And they beat us down, put their names on us, gave us their language, and gave us a little bit of freedom in the land where they keep us alive and beat us up every day and kill us, etc. You know the deal. So either A, that is true. We are just the people who just got beat down in a war. We lost the military conflict. And we were conquered and shipped away. And that's that. And there is no help for us because we can't deal with them militarily. They own all the land. They own all the gold. They print all the money. And their dominion, their rulership is across the seas. It's upon the whole face of the earth. They have allies that have weaponry that we do not have and will never possess. They have militaries. We do not have a standing army. So what has happened is, if you don't believe in the book, then the next reality is that we're just a conquered people who's been beaten down, and we just have to live with that. And that's it. The end. So you have to determine exactly which one of those two you're going with. I'm going to say it's a mixture of both. The book is true, and we are a conquered people who've been beaten down by enemies and shipped away. And that's that. So, I've read the Most High's laws within your ear. You have heard it. Those who will turn their ear away from the Most High's law, even their prayer is an abomination. So if you heard the words of the Most High, you couldn't stand it. Don't even waste your time trying to pray. He will not hear you. So let's go ahead and consider our ways and our doings and make it good. Continue to walk within the laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts of the Most High. Ensure that you uphold the standard by the things that you say and the things that you do. That way, Israelites around you can see clearly that you do not have a spirit of fear on you. It's amazing what a man who is upright will do to some men around him who are not. It can cause them to want to be upright, or it may cause them to hate him. But if they do hate him, there's absolutely nothing they can do to stand before him. The Most High won't allow it. So decide exactly which way you will walk. What I've done is I have presented the law before you as the Most High presented it to us at Sinai. And we were given a choice. Choose life that you and your seed may live by doing that which is right in the sight of the Most High, or choose that which is wicked and go contrary to this law, go against the grain, and nothing but death and destruction, pestilence and the sword is coming your way. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel. Do not ever make the mistake of picking the lesser of two evils. As a righteous person, as a man of Israel, or a stranger that has taken a hold of the Most High's law, you are to withdraw your hands from all manner of evil and wickedness. You are not to go against the grain. Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Once again, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Peace, Israel.